welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Quest, with me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by Spirit. I am very excited to share my gift with you and empower you to embrace your gift. So if you define yourself as a spiritual human being, then you've come to the right place. So prepare yourself now for an amazing journey where your soul will lead the way. Welcome to the Spiritual Quest podcast, always guided by Spirit. So what does that mean, always guided by Spirit? Well, today we'll dive deeper into this topic of how you can reinvent your life by listening to your intuition. My guest is a globally recognized author, cultural leader, and teacher of intuition. Linking spirituality, science, and culture, her mission is to empower all people to live extraordinary lives through the expansion of intuitive consciousness. Kim Chestney is the founder of IntuitionLab, which is an international school dedicated to teaching a practical, integrated approach to awakening and attuning humanity's innate, intuitive nature. Her books, Radical Intuition, A Revolutionary Guide to Using Your Inner Power, and the Psychic Workshop, a complete program for fulfilling your spiritual potential, have been published around the world and translated into multiple languages for over 10 years. Kim leads life-changing intuition empowerment retreats, online courses, and workshops that cultivate a new practice of insightfulness that leads individuals deeper into the awareness of their true inner nature and the powerful reality of the world beyond. Her pioneering work has been featured by ABC News, Coast to Coast AM, the Omega Institute, Spirituality and Health, Mantra Wellness Energy Medicine magazine, among others. It's my great pleasure to introduce the insightful Kim Chestney.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
Thank you. I can see that we're lagging a little bit in our image and voice, but we'll go with the flow, shall we, Kim? And would you please just share a little bit? I think I said a lot about what you do, and I'm so impressed, to be honest. And when we have a common friend, and when I heard that you were doing something with him, and I kind of read up on you, I was like, whoa, I need to have this woman on my show because you're kind of like the queen of intuition, if you wish. So how did you get into all that?
Oh, wow. So great question. And the answer is I never planned to do anything like this. Sometimes life just takes you where you need to go, as I'm sure you realize. And part of that whole process is just following your intuition. So, really, as a young child, I had very strong intuition. I had things happen in my life intuitively that I sought to understand. So I think my journey was really a process of understanding my world, and a lot of the things that we talk about with Pete, with quantum consciousness and understanding the higher dimension of reality, because I realized really early on there's so much more to life than what they teach us. And anyone who's had any little glimpse of a spiritual awakening or any kind of experience that doesn't fit in the confines of this, sort of three-dimensional world of time and space, once something like that happens, you realize that there's more to it. And so it really started me on this quest to investigate that world and understand that world, and and what it means to us and in our growth as human beings.
Wow. So you said you started as a child. You have experiences. Would you share a little bit about how these experiences and how it affected you as a child?
Yeah, I think when I was young, the first thing was I grew up in a haunted house. So when I was little, all kinds of strange metaphysical things would happen. TVs would turn on, doors would close, and this would just became like a normal way of life in my family. We all saw it, we all experienced it. So as really early on, it got in me that there's something else happening, and I think when I was in my teens and 20s, this is a funny story actually. When I was living in England, and I went to the Hull Fair, which if you've ever been to Northern England, it's a wonderful fair that comes through in the fall, and they have gypsies and carnivals and all this stuff. And there was a gypsy there who read my palms. It was just like the equivalent of like $5. It was next to nothing. She was the sweetest woman. And she told me, she gave me a date. She said, in 1994, you're going to be in a foreign courtroom. And I was just like, okay, wow. Okay, so I was in England, so I was thinking maybe something was going to happen when I was back at the States. And lo and behold, in 1993, I got a jury summons, and I ended up being in a national court case in 1994. And I was sequestered, and it was this really big deal. So I thought, oh my gosh, it is possible to know the future. I was without a doubt sure that it was possible. And that opened up this whole line of thinking of, if she can do it, can we all do it? How is it possible? And that's really, we went down this sort of rabbit hole in quantum thinking and starting to understand our ability to know things beyond time and space. And it's actually very real and possible, despite what we've been told our whole lives.
So when you got this future reading, or I don't know what you call it, but is it a future reading? Is that what you call it? Or intuition reading or palm reading? Or I'm
It
sure
was,
there's a label for it.
yeah,
Palm
she
reading?
was reading palms. That's what she did.
Okay. So when she read your palm and you got this information, because you did have experiences prior to this. So you and your family, like you said, you had experiences with your house and everything going on. So other dimensions. But reading the future, what did that do, or did it shift you in the way you look at your life or your direction of life, or did you just go, okay, we'll see what happens?
No, it really changed everything for me. It really started to drive me. It became sort of my core motivation in life to understand how this is possible. And that's one of the reasons why I founded IntuitionLab, because I wanted to understand how to do it. And so I've been researching this and practicing it and all this stuff for what, almost 30 years now. So it's really been this process of figuring out what we can do with our own vibration and our own state of consciousness and awareness to open up to those dimensions that are beyond the reality that we're living in. And this is one of the things I talk about a lot, and I talked about with Pete, is the idea that intuition is a kind of quantum thinking. So we've been taught our whole life to think in the Newtonian way, that's cause and effect, right? Time, moment by moment, action, reaction. That's how we're taught to understand our world. And that's the way the physical reality works, 3 dimension. But now we understand there's a thing called quantum physics, and there's a whole nother reality at work behind this simulation that we're living in. So the intellectual mind can't work or reach that reality because it's wired to think linearly to interact with this world. That's what the gift of intuition is. The intuition is our ability to access the quantum world. So with our intuition, we think like the quantum world does. We can jump from A to B without all the thinking in between. There's no such thing as time. All of the data of the universe is out there, and we intuitively have access to all those points, past, future, parallel, all of it. So really, intuition, the fact it's been latent in us for so long, it's coming to fruition now, just like we're coming to learn about the quantum reality and have completely new discussions about reality than we could 100, 200 years ago, because our intuition is built to navigate the quantum reality.
May I ask you then, because a lot of people are feeling, some people will call it shift, or the shift in energy, or that we're moving into new ways of thinking and feeling and living in some way. Um, these hard times that a lot of people experience, do you think that if we've used our intuition, if we had that belief system, or we use that intuition from that we had in the past, that we used, it was inner nature, I guess, in the past, would we be where we are today, do you think? I mean, do you think we'd be somewhere else?
Well, I think that it's a natural unfolding, and it's a circular process. I think that a long, long time ago we had intuition, and we worked off intuition before we had developed our intellectual minds. We might have been primarily intuitive back pre-civilizations days. But then something happened, and we started to realize that we could get really smart. We developed our brains and our minds, and we created all these knowledge systems, and we got super smart. So now the next step is, it's sort of that Hegelian dialectic thing where we go back to the beginning, But now it's not just our intuition. We have our intuition and our mind working together. So we're in an altogether different place than we were at the start. But now it's only by balancing and using both sides of our minds, our consciousness, that we really become whole, right? If we just live intuitively, then we really don't fulfill our potential as really conscious sentient beings. But then if we integrate our mind and our intuition, then we're able to have the heart, have the mind, and really fix things and get back to where we want to be. Because yes, it is hard now, and I think part of the reasons why it's so hard right now, and we're going through a lot of this stuff we're going through as a world culture, is because we've gone too far into the mind. We've just all we are is mind. We've forgotten about that other side. That's why it's so important now that we reconnect to that intuitive nature and rebalance, because it's like life, the universe, nature, it's all calling us back into that stillness and calm of our intuitive nature.
My next question is, how do we do it, Kim? I mean, how do we get, jumpstart this and really, because like you said, everybody has that, it's something we carry within ourselves. We're spiritual beings. So how do we embrace that again?
Such a good question, and it really is actually a lot simpler than you might think. It's really simple and really hard, because really what we need to do more than anything is slow down. The first thing is just slow down, get out of our heads. We have to get out of the head and the ego, and slow down and return to ourselves. So it's actually a really simple process in many ways, but it's also hard because we have to let go of a lot of our identity attachments and ambitions and all of this mind-made conditioning that we've been fed our whole lives. Like, you have to do this to be successful, you have to do this and this and this, when reality what we really need to do is just slow down and go within. And then, once you get into that state of mindfulness where you can reach that stillness, the stillness really is a sacred space. So all this talk about meditation and all this movement towards mindfulness is so important, but it's not the end of the story. We just don't go and sit in stillness. We go into that stillness because the stillness speaks. The spirit of our intuition that allows us to redefine our lives and know our true selves and find our peace. So it's really about a going back in.
I'm thinking about your book, Radical Intuition. I'm interested in knowing radical. I mean, there's a reason you use that strong word, radical. So, what makes it radical?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it really is radical. And we talked about naming the book, and when we came up with that, it really just clicked, because this is, if you really listen to what I'm saying, you take it to heart. It is a radical shift. It's a radical shift in the way we live. It's a radical shift in the way we understand our world. And it is a little ahead of its time. I think there's early adopters out there now who get this and understand. I worked in technology, so for me, intuition was something that it wasn't just a spiritual practice, which it very much is a deep heart connection, but it's also something that's so important as we talk about innovation and ingenuity and invention. Our intuition is key to all of that stuff that will grow humanity. So on one hand, it's so key to our personal growth, but it's also key to the growth of our civilization as a whole. So it becomes radical when it calls us to step back from our conditioning, to trust in ourselves, to believe in that voice within us and follow that insight, that guidance, that inspiration that comes within us, instead of following everybody else. Instead of chasing the world and being like other people, you own your own power and bring that power through. And that can make radical change.
And I so agree with you. And I love it because I know firsthand, I've had a similar experience as a child like you. I saw spirit. I had my spirit guide Zarius with me. My first recollection of him was in my mother's womb. And so I remember playing with him when I was a child. And my life, and I had visions of my life. I knew what was going to happen and unfold in my life until the age of 30, when everything was dark, where I actually went through a depression because I wanted to follow the crowd. I wanted to be part of, not be the weird one, if you wish, and not be so sensitive, just because I felt like I needed to be someone else. I needed to fit in somehow, to get the job, to be accepted, to to just live and be part of society, I had to follow a norm. And that actually radically made me go into darkness. But the thing with that was radically intuition stepped in at my darkest moment, where I actually, when I surrendered and said, okay, if I die, I die. It was kind of that, it was that dark. And then I fell asleep crying, and I woke up with this intuition. I heard my soul voice that I hadn't heard for a long time. My spirit spoke to me, and I just heard one foot at it, or one step at a time. And I felt that intuition, and I said, okay, I'll just follow that voice or that gut feeling. I'll just do that, and I'll become better. And one day, and one day, and one day, and of course, I had to do, when I built up my power again, I had to do something radical. And that's where radical intuition for me really responds or makes sense, is I had to go my own way. I had to take my power back. And I had to do what other people thought were crazy. And so I just decided that I would always follow the guidance of spirit like I did as a child. They would always protect me. I knew I had them around me. I knew I had the power, the spirit. The only thing I needed to do was listen to my soul, listen to the intuition, and just follow my path. And it was radical. And here I am 15 years later, still doing the same thing. But it's, to be honest, it doesn't get any easier. That's my experience. I still have to work on it. I still have to be, because I am present in the society. I have family and all that. So I guess my question is for you. So how do we keep building that momentum? How do we keep doing this when it's chaos around us? People are not on board with this yet.
Well, first, I just want to respond to that intuitive insight that you got when you sort of came out of that dark night of the soul. The idea of going one step at a time, putting one step in front of the other, that is actually a really crucial message. And it's a message that I share a lot with my community, because this is a common question. Because, we all sort of have ideas of what we want to do. We have goals, we have aspiration, inspiration, and we often just want to get to the end. And we see that vision of what other people are doing, and we want to live that life, right? But with intuition, you just have to follow it towards that next step. So that's the thing. So your intuition moves through your mind, through your heart, through your body. There's so many ways your intuition can speak to you. But when you're talking about your path and your decision, a lot of that comes from that heart center and that feeling of resonance. And really the key with that is just trusting your intuition for every little step of the way. And if you do that, you will get to the right place where you're meant to go, right? We always think we know where we're going to go. Oh, this is where I want to go. But really, there's something better. And your intuition knows what it is. Your intuition is your best friend. You can trust your intuition more than anything else in the world. So relying on your intuition to guide you, to move you, just to make that next step. As hard as things are, when things are falling down around you, listen to what is that next step, because no matter how dark a hole you are down, your intuition can pull you out if you just take that next step, that next step, that next step that our mind can't even foresee. So that's really, I think, a key for getting us back up to where we need to be. And you're so right, it's not, it doesn't just get magically easier, right? I mean, I do say with intuition, when we learn to follow our intuition and live in harmony with intuition, we learn the easy way instead of the hard way, right? So you're just following that path of resonance, so the doors open and things align. That's your intuitive path. When you try and figure out things with your mind, often we have to get kind of course corrected by the outside world from time to time. So we can learn either way. With our intuition, we learn the easy way. So it does get easier when we follow our intuition, but there's always going to be challenges because life wants us to grow and expand.
Yeah, I think is the intuition for me. It's more like when I followed it. It's building trust within myself, trusting my own power, trusting my gut feeling. So it's easier for me to follow the intuition. But still, life happens. We do have a mind. we have a personality from an ego perspective as well. So sometimes it can be difficult in situations, but knowing that there's always, because you said something about that, you'll always, if you just listen, take a step back, you will see the doors open, you will get back on track if you just stop. And I think my question then is, if you find yourself moving in the, thinking, because here's the point, you're thinking you're doing following your intuition because you started out at the point of following your intuition, but you kind of detoured, if you wish. How do we go back to default or to follow your intuition?
Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest questions that I get. Is like, how do I know I'm actually following my intuition? Right. So in the book Radical Intuition, I have like a checklist that'll say qualities of real intuition versus qualities of non-intuition. Right. So there's a whole bunch of them, and but to summarize it roughly is, we want to stay attuned to that still small voice of peace and power. Right. Those are qualities of our intuition versus our feelings, our wants, wishes, ambitions, all of that stuff, fears, all of those things are voices. There's not just one voice in our head, right? Because there's a lot of voices in our head. Our job is to tune into that true voice, to that solid centered voice of our intuition. So learning what your intuition feels like, and like you said, the more that you practice it and build trust in it, then you'll know it. You'll be like, okay, this is how my intuition feels because it worked great for me last time. I know I can trust this. So it's really important that we, consciously embrace our intuition, develop our intuition. It's like your mind, right? We weren't born being really smart. We went to go to school. We learned how to use our minds. We have to learn how to use our intuition too, and that takes practice and attention and that moving inward. So yeah, so I think it's a process of trust building, and practice will help you to like get back into that natural way of insightfulness.
I think also when you're talking, I'm thinking about the awareness that you get when you follow your intuition. It's like your perception consciousness expands. It's like you're not, or at least that's how it is for me. Like I can feel the push of the energy. I can feel my heart vibration activate. I can feel the pull. It's like the soul's calling that I can, okay, so this is right. This is the way moving forward. This is right for me at this moment. But of course I have to be aware of where I place my footing, if you wish, that I go with peaceful footsteps. I like to look at it that way, that I don't run or rush, just go with peaceful footsteps, be present, listen, and be aware of anything that comes your way, like reading the signs, if you wish, as long as you choose to be open and have that. So I think intuition for me is also the opening to something much, much greater. So I don't know, does that come with experience, or do you think that some people are just more intuitive than others?
Great question. So I think that first of all, everybody's got intuition. Everybody is intuitive, just like everybody is smart and has the ability to use their intellectual minds. Everybody has their ability to use their intuitive mind. Some people, it's just like a talent. Some people were born more naturally open to it. Like some people can play the piano or the guitar, or some people are artists. It's a lot like that. You can have a natural affinity to intuition. So some people might have to work a little harder to develop their intuition, but everybody can do it. It's just part of our nature. And I think, back to what you were saying about expansion, is intuition's job is to put us in a state of expansion. That is really one of the defining characteristics of intuition. If you feel like you're expanding, if you feel like you're evolving, growing, learning, feeling alive, feeling empowered, these are all qualities that intuition leads us to. If we're in a place where we're feeling small, we're feeling powerless, we're feeling scared, this is nothing to do with your intuition. If you're led to a place like that, it's usually from your fears or your ego or some other force. So when we're living by our intuition, it doesn't matter if we're setting the world on fire or just living a quiet meditative life at home. If we're following our intuition, we will be in that continued state of expansion and openness and that really place of flow and ease.
So do you see this, where you're in the States, right? I know you travel, but um, do you think that some societies or some countries, the western side of the world compared to the northern side of the world, is it are we on the same track, if you wish, the same energy field? Is it easier to be intuitive in the western world or northern hemisphere, or is it similar for everyone?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I think if you look around the globe, there are different areas where intuition is flourishing. The East has traditionally been very intuitive with Eastern mysticism and Eastern religion. Meditation, yoga, all of that stuff really is really rich in a tradition of intuition. So, particularly India really they have integrated intuition into their culture for centuries in a way that we haven't done in the West. I'm interested to hear what it's like in Norway, but in America, it's we've got some catching up to do. But I think things like our technology and innovation and creativity are all ways that our intuition is very strong in that area in terms of a real practical intuition. But we're still needing the little ability to rebalance ourselves and pull back and have more of that inward focus with the spiritual aspect of things.
I think we're pretty much similar to the States when it comes to how we have a way to go. And I usually look at how we treat our children. So, and in the school system. So that really gives us, a glimpse into the future, right? So I have a child, my youngest daughter. I have two girls, but my youngest, she's very intuitive. She had the same gifts, if you wish, like me. So she sees spirits and she sees the aura. And she's now 15 and she's kind of not, she's more out there, just like me, trying to fit in, finding her way. But I've had to have, I remember already in kindergarten and in or in middle school and in the younger schools, I don't know what it's called in English, but I had to speak with the teacher. I took that part knowing she's an empath and knowing that she sucks all the information in. She has no clue how to deal with it. And there's no way in the school system at this time giving her the space to protect her energy wise. So she would always come home crying from school, or she would be tired. She wouldn't go to school. She didn't learn anything. And then when I spoke to her about these things, she said to me that, but mommy, my teacher is not feeling well. And I was like, okay, so here we go. So I really had to, sit the teachers down, speak to them about what it is to have a sensitive child. And knowing that I had to go in and do this and being born like this and just feeling that this is my normal way of living, I've, that was hard, to be honest, Kim. That was really hard. And it was an eye opener for me because I've been following my radical intuition, if you wish. And my children have seen me do this because they were small children when I started this. So they know how mommy is following her intuition. So I always say I have to find stillness. I have to, I don't want to make a decision until I'm certain. Yeah, I want to make the right decision, not only for me, but for the family. So looking at that perspective, I think we have a long way to go. And knowing what they do in India, and knowing that in schools they meditate, they bring, they do yoga, these things is not even being discussed yet here in Norway. And it's, to me, it's, weird. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is weird because we're so far, we talked about this like earlier, that we're now shifting, right? We're moving, we're more open, aware. This is happening. People are more intuitive, or they're at least more interested in understanding themselves and finding out what's going on. And I actually feel, I don't know about you, let me ask you this. Do you feel like after the pandemic and now the war in Europe, there is a lot of fear and we do have a choice. We can choose the love or we can choose the fear, right? But do you feel for your personal journey that people are more open or more closed in this era right now, like what's going on in the world at this specific moment?
I mean, what I'm seeing with my students and with the people that I work with and know in my community, I think there is a huge dissonance that's happening right now. And I think as a whole, people feel really uncertain. I don't know that necessarily fear is the right word, but there's this under sort of foundational element of uncertainty. Like we've lost that ability of trust in our world because we thought, oh, we're living in a safe world. Well, then a pandemic comes. Like, wow, like whoever thought we could close down schools and go in quarantine? Like that's a kind of thing that, when we were kids, never in a million years would we have thought something like that would happen. And it did. So I think it took away a lot of that sort of root chakra security that we have of feeling safe in our world. And so that creates a foundational problem. I think that we're all sort of going through kind of collective trauma on that regard. And now the war, I mean, the war is just, I mean, we did not need this right now, like, I mean, we did not need to have to deal with this all of these horrible, horrible things that are happening over there. So, I mean, I really feel like this level of uncertainty is something that, we talk about intuition. Intuition is something that guides us through that uncertainty. And when we trust and live in the moment, whether we're surrounded by love or surrounded by fear or really witnessing firsthand, the darkness that can happen in this world. We just have to know and trust that our intuition is still there for us no matter what, and will take us on that next little step to get us back, hopefully back to center, back to vibrancy, back to this living, this life of truth and happiness that we're all hoping for.
So true. Um, Reflecting now on intuition in general, but is there any time when you should not use your intuition at this moment in time? Or is it something we should always follow? I know it's a hard question, I guess. I don't think anything is black and white, but let me just ask you that question.
I actually do think that's a black and white question.
You do? How
So I'm
perfect!
going to say yes, you should always follow your intuition. And this is something that's because people say to me, they say, well, what happens when your intuition's wrong? Well, guess what? Your intuition is never wrong. It's never wrong. It cannot by nature be wrong because intuition is truth. Intuition is your connection to truth, to the ultimate truth. And the problem is we get our intuition wrong, right? Sometimes we think it's our intuition, but it's not. So if you're like, yeah, my intuition, there's two things that can happen. First of all, my intuition told me to take this job. And then it was like, oh, you look back, maybe it wasn't my intuition. Maybe I just really wanted a change or a bigger paycheck or whatever. So we could have mistook our intuition. That's one thing that happens. The other thing that happens is sometimes we don't understand how intuition works. Our intuition might tell you to take that job, and then you get like fired a week later, and you're like, man, why did I trust my intuition? Meanwhile, while you're at that job for 5 minutes, say some other person found you and like your ultimate dream job reaches out to you and it's a couple steps down the road, right? So talking about that step by step by step, you can't always see that end goal. So we have to remain in that trust. And even if you're 100% sure that your intuition told you to do something and it didn't work out the way you expected it to, hang in there because it's going to keep taking you on those steps to get you where you need to be. You don't know where you need to be, but your intuition does.
I love that you said that. I'm so glad I asked you that question because that's what I was looking for. What's the next thing? I've heard that people, but I did follow my intuition, but it didn't unfold the way I perceived it or had a vision of it. And somehow you give up.
Yes,
You change lanes, if you wish. And then you go against your intuition and it never unfolds. And
exactly.
so, like you said, we have to keep trusting the intuition and keep moving. And I needed this for me right now, actually, because I've been kind of, sensing out my path. I'm reinventing how I do my work because what used to fulfill me really doesn't do that anymore, the same way as it did prior to going through this that we've all been
Part of
going
the
through.
expansion. That's why you're expanding.
That was like, okay, I need to really open myself up and just trust the intuition. But it's so easy for the human aspect of you, the thinking part, the ego part, to just,
oh, you cannot, you can just sit here and take off like for a month and not do anything. You have to be productive. You have to, have to work. You have to earn an income. You have to, but instead, just no, I'll be taken care of. I'll just realign myself. I need this for me. I mean, and I know myself so good that if I had, jumped on the first thing that came about, I'd probably be sick within 3 weeks,
Yes. Yes.
just knowing it. So, and that brings me actually over to, the energy flow of us. Um, the intuition, you talk about four different ways of intuition. Would you share that and how that affects our energy body?
Yeah, yeah. Now that's a great question. So when I was trying to understand intuition, I wanted to really look at the whole scope of it, because one thing I realized many, many years ago is if you ask people what intuition is, you would get a lot of answers. Some people would be like, oh, a gut feeling, or like a psychic vision, or like a creative idea. There were so many different answers to that question that I really wanted to understand the nature of it. And what I realized is essentially our intuition, this overarching, beautiful guiding force of intuition, speaks to us, works with us based on basically the four elements of human being: body, mind, heart, and spirit. So your intuition can speak to you through your body, your physical intuition. You get those chills, right? Or you get a gut feeling. It works with your actual body and your energy attunement. Works with the chakras and all those ways to bring intuitive energy through your physical body. It also works through the mind, through your mental processes, through intuitive guidance, right? Making that choice, knowing which way to go, making that decision with confidence and clarity. That's how your inner guidance system, inner GPS works. And then through your heart, through your feelings, through being moved. So I always say we have to be really careful with your feelings, because intuition's not an emotion, it's emotive, right? So emotions are very much tied in with our ego and our personal event, sort of identity. So the difference with that sort of intuition is that creative intuition, or intuition of the heart, calls us to move towards our passions and the things we love. And we're called to those things because that's our way of contributing to the world and making our mark on the world, because that's the energetic frequency that we're aligned with. So it's really about listening to our callings and those things on a higher level, instead of like our lower emotions, which might be like things that are, stuff for me personally instead of the world. So then the fourth type of intuition is the intuition of the spirit, which is those metaphysical experiences and those moments of connection with truth and God. Yogananda said that intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. And at the highest level, that's what intuition is. It's our connection to the divine, to spirit, to the universe, whatever word you use for it. Our intuition is our connection to that. And the way that you connect to all of those things is by slowing down and being still, so that that intuition can move through the space between our thoughts, the silence, the peace within us. One of the things I always say, and this harkens back to what you said, do nothing like it's your job, right? So you talked about, oh, if I take a month off, like, oh my gosh, that's like so bad. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Actually, that's the best thing you could do, because that's the silence, that's the space where these insights and discoveries and wisdom can flow through.
Oh, hallelujah. Sorry. I hate to say that. I mean, I love that so much because I think the world needs that right now. Yes, we've been stuck in this pandemic and locked up, but we still need, you know, we had to go inside, but the piece I'm talking about is to find out who you want to be when you show up in this new world, if you wish. Like, how do I want to use my gifts? Why am I here? I think for me, even though I've asked myself those questions a lot, following my intuition and trusting that I know there's something bigger for me, but it's like living in the moment. You're trusting your intuition. So I'm not visualizing, if you wish, the future the way I used to see my future, but trusting that my intuition will bring me there or guide me there. I actually activated the gift of seeing again, because that was gone for a long while, because I was thinking I was following my intuition. And then I actually experienced that no, you're not. yes, you are in one way, but you're detoured. Now you have to take a break. And that time I had to take a break for 3 months. I went actually on a TV show to get away from the whole world. I regressed back. Um, it's a reality show called The Farm. So you live in nature, you live off the
Oh,
land.
wow.
And I, with the guidance of spirit, they actually told me this a year before I got casted for the show, that I would go there. And I told my husband, I think I'm going on the show. They go, no, you can't live out there. You're going to be hungry. You're not going to be somebody who people won't like you if you go out there. I was like, okay, let's not put that on me. But I ended up having, I remember telling a friend that I don't understand completely why, but I have to follow my intuition. I have to go. I have to realign myself. There's something I can't see, but I need to do it. And so that really detoxified me. I got to be with nature and animals. And I went all the way to the final week. So I was there 3 months, and I didn't have to take care of anybody else except for myself and the animals, and just making sure, living off the land.
Wow.
And that was what I needed.
Wow.
That really, so it was more like a healing journey for me than a reality show.
Wow.
So the reality hit when I got home, and I saw myself on TV, and I was like, oh, I was done with that. That's when I had to start, working with myself and saying, okay, so you have more to learn. So it was a great learning experience. But I just wanted to let you know that I know firsthand, being intuitive, following the guidance of spirit, and then finding out that you have to just push the button, stop, take a break, realign,
Yes.
listen. And it's so hard for me because I'm looking at my parents. They're always on the go. I mean, they cannot sit still. So it's like, I just really had to look at the adopted patterns, if you wish, again, re-emerging. I just felt like, and I heard the voice of my father that, you have to be productive, you have to this. So all these things that I worked through just came floating up again. And I really had to take a look at myself and go, okay, so I'll have to surrender and forgive and release and cleanse. And then I'm ready to listen to my intuition. But until then, I'm not making any big decisions. So that's how I do it. I don't know. How do you do it? Like personally, when you feel things are, really moving fast and it's chaotic, what is your go-to?
Yeah, that's tough. It is really tough, because I think part of the work we have to do when we're developing our intuition and moving into this intuitive mindset of insightfulness is we really have to go through a time of deconditioning, because we've been conditioned so much by these different voices in our heads, our parents, our schools, TV, culture, right? So making that radical shift to live true to yourself, meaning do what you need instead of what the world tells you to do. And that takes a while, because that conditioning is deep. And especially, for instance, if you grow up with a family that's really, driven and driven towards accomplishment. And, I have family members that were like that too. Always couldn't sit still. So that really accentuates the need right now to allow ourselves to slow down and allow ourselves to take that piece. So it's not always a comfortable feeling. And that's something that I think is important to note with intuition. Intuition can make you uncomfortable. And that is something we have to realize. And in so many ways, right? Because it's going to call you out of your comfort zone, right? And it's going to teach you to do things, because we want to expand. So we have to get out of the comfort zone. Sometimes it's going to course correct us, and that's not going to feel comfortable either. So we have to get out of that place where we think we know how things are supposed to be and how it's going to do, and just surrender to the mystery and the magic and let our intuition take us into that space, right? Just follow it and see what happens, and completely let go of those other voices and allow ourselves to do that, right? And it can be hard, because we really want to be free. And that's the core of it. Our intuition is trying to set us free. It's trying to set us free. But we are so tangled up in all of this stuff with reality and in the mind and our expectations of the world and our life, that we create our own prisons. We create our own problems and stress. So it doesn't happen overnight. You have to be patient with yourself, because it takes time to cultivate this space. And then once you think you've made it, you've got into the space, then life will take you into the next thing you have to learn, because we do want to be continually growing and expanding. So, there's not a short answer to that question, but I think the gist is, we really just have to keep trusting and putting on the brakes when we need to put on the brakes and allow ourselves to do it.
Allowing ourselves to do it. I think, yes, I totally agree. But one last question, because a lot of people, or many people in my surroundings have children, and some of them are very sensitive or empathic. And how do we guide our children to, if we're not as good as maybe following our own intuition always, but how do we give them that space? Do you have any tips or ideas for us how we can make that space for our children?
Such a good question, because really the future generations are going to be what's defining our world. So, really opening children up to intuition, allowing them to nurture their intuitive nature is so important, because the truth is, we come to this world very intuitive. Children are very intuitive. Like you said, you have imaginary friends. You're able to connect with that level of life until, right, the real world kind of beats it out of us. Like, that's not real. That's not real. That's not okay. It's not real, right? I've just put that away, or that's not possible. So, helping children at this point to nurture their creativity. I mean, creativity is a wonderful outlet for intuition. Imagination is very much tied into your intuition. So, this is why it's extra bad in America when we're cutting out so much of the arts from schools, right? There's a whole movement for us to remake learning here, and to integrate and teach in a creative way, in a way of imagination, not just these formulas and memorizations that ultimately isn't going to be, what we really need to succeed. So, really, I say, like, nurturing the natural intuitive nature of children, and allowing them to own that and be proud of that and to flourish with that is really crucial into creating new generations of people that are balanced both intuitively and intellectually.
Yes. Yes. Like everything you said, yes. I so agree. And just for the parents out there, give yourself the opportunity to do the work yourself, be that example, and just be aware. See your child. Like, just be there, see their beauty, their natural inner guidance, allow them to explore. Sometimes, I love that when, my youngest were very young, she would play in, I could hear her. I remember, I have one recollection of this. My husband and I, we had changed who was going to get up in the morning with her on Saturday. So we changed, he would do Saturday, I would do Sunday. And I remember she walked up the stairs. We were going to watch TV, and she goes, "Daddy, Daddy, there's a man on the couch." And my husband went, "What?" It was like, "Well, I don't know. Tell him to go." And you could hear her just go, "Oh, my daddy says you need to go now. We are watching TV." And she goes, "Oh, no, he's gone." And it was all quiet. That was such an hilarious experience. I was just, yes. Yes. And I love the way my husband just gave her the space and just trusted
Yeah.
her to deal with it,
Yeah.
and not,
Yes.
calling me out, or, just, well, why don't you just ask him to go? And it was just such a wonderful experience. I just wanted to share that, because I think that's, even though you don't experience it yourself, just give your child, just meet them where they are. So,
Absolutely. That is 100% the right attitude. And he didn't shame her, tell her that, oh, she's seeing things, and, like, that's what our parents would have done in our generation, right? So this really is about acceptance and empowerment of these kids, and really validating that they are experiencing something.
wow, I just love our conversation, Kim. I could talk for hours with you. I mean, seriously, intuition is such a powerful thing, and I hope I can have you on another time, so go more in detail to Radical Intuition, the book, and maybe have you on um, like a live event, so we could have some question jump in for us, because I think a lot of people really, really need what you bring as your gift and your mission to, help people live extraordinary lives. So I'm really grateful for the work that you do. And thank you so much for spending time with us, Kim.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing your mission with us. If you want to learn more about Kim and her amazing work, you'll find a link to her website in the episode summary. And don't forget to sign up for the Spiritual Quest podcast newsflash to receive bonus material and invitations to live events. You can sign up by clicking the link in the episode summary. Thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to share my soul purpose with you. I hope you enjoyed listening to Spiritual Quest with me, your host, Vibeke Garnås. And if you did, I would really appreciate if you would share it with the world. I'm sending you lots of love and light from me, your host, Vibeke Garnås, always guided by spirit.